Black women aren't my type, Dante Moretti said, his words cutting through the private room like a blade, never imagining that 3 weeks later, a woman in a red dress would bring the most powerful man in Chicago to his knees. The cigar smoke curled toward the vaulted ceiling of Moretti's, the exclusive restaurant where Chicago's most dangerous men made deals that never saw daylight. Dante Moretti sat at the head of the table, his tailored Tom Ford suit worth more than most people's cars, his dark eyes cold and assessing as they swept over his inner circle. The Maxwell Corporation merger, his consigliere, Vincent, said, sliding a folder across the mahogany table. Everything's in place. But they're insisting on using their attorney for the contract review. Dante's jaw tightened. He didn't like variables he couldn't control. Who? Zara Williams. Graduated top of her class from Harvard Law, made partner at Sterling and Associates in record time. She's... Vincent hesitated, and Dante caught the pause. She's what? She's black, Marco, one of his captains, interjected with a smirk. Word is she's brilliant, but ice cold. Turned down 3 of Maxwell's board members who tried to take her to dinner. The table erupted in low chuckles, but Dante's expression remained unchanged. He lifted his whiskey, the amber liquid catching the low light. Doesn't matter what she looks like. If she's competent, she'll do her job. Come on, boss, Marco pressed, emboldened by the whiskey flowing freely. You gonna tell us she's your type? Because I remember that model from last month, and the socialite before that, Anne. Black women aren't my type, Dante said, his voice flat and final. The words came out easier than they should have, a statement he'd made so many times it had become fact in his mind, unchallenged and absolute. What did you think of Dante's opening statement? Drop your first impressions in the comments below, I read every single one. The room fell silent for just a moment before Vincent cleared his throat and redirected the conversation to territory percentages and shipment schedules. But the words hung in the air, another brick in the wall Dante had built around himself over 38 years. He'd grown up in a world of rigid lines and older traditions, where his father's voice still echoed in his head, we marry our own kind, Dante. It's about legacy, about preserving what we've built. And Dante had never questioned it, had never needed to. His world was full of beautiful women who fit neatly into the boxes he'd constructed, European features, specific backgrounds, the kind of women who looked good on his arm at charity galas and didn't ask questions about his business. It wasn't hatred, he told himself. Just preference. Just the way things were. What Dante didn't know, as he finished his whiskey and dismissed his men for the night, was that Zara Williams was at that very moment, 3 miles away, preparing to dismantle every certainty he'd ever held. Zara Williams stood in her corner office on the 42nd floor of the Sterling and Associates building, the Chicago skyline glittering before her like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a woman in complete control, tailored navy suit, natural hair pulled back in a sleek low bun, minimal jewelry except for the pearl earrings that had been her grandmother's. She looked perfect. Untouchable. Exactly as she needed to be. The Moretti meeting is confirmed for Monday, her assistant, Jennifer, said from the doorway. Maxwell's CEO wants you to handle all direct negotiations. Zara didn't turn from the window. Background on Moretti? Extensive. I've sent the files to your encrypted folder. Jennifer paused. Zara, there are rumors about him. About his associations. I don't deal in rumors. I deal in contracts and legal precedent. Zara's voice was calm, professional, giving away nothing of the exhaustion creeping through her bones. When Jennifer left, Zara finally allowed her shoulders to drop, just slightly. She was tired, not from the work, which she loved, but from the constant performance. Being twice as good to be considered half as qualified. Smiling through microaggressions in boardrooms. Watching men like the ones she'd be meeting with look past her, through her, around her, until her brilliance became impossible to ignore. She'd heard the whispers about Dante Moretti beyond his business reputation. Old money family. Traditional values. A man who dated a very specific type of woman, and that type looked nothing like her. Fine. She wasn't here to be desired. She was here to be respected, to do her job with excellence, and to prove, again, that she belonged in every space she entered. Zara pulled the red dress from her office closet, the one she'd picked up for the Maxwell Corporation's annual charity gala next week. She'd almost returned it 3 times. Too bold. Too much. Too attention-grabbing for a woman who'd learned to make herself smaller in professional spaces. But something had stopped her each time. Maybe she was tired of making herself smaller. Maybe, just once, she wanted to take up space unapologetically. She hung the dress back up and returned to her desk, unaware that in 3 weeks, that dress would change everything. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Zara reviewed every clause of the Maxwell merger agreement, anticipating challenges, building her arguments like a fortress. She'd learned early in her career that perfection was her only armor against dismissal. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Zara entered the Sterling and Associates conference room 15 minutes early, her materials organized, her expression neutral. She'd chosen a charcoal suit, professional, commanding, forgettable. The Maxwell executives arrived first, offering warm greetings. Then the door opened again, and Dante Moretti walked in. Zara's first thought was clinical, he was exactly what she expected. Tall, imposing, with the kind of Mediterranean features that graced cologne advertisements. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and an air of absolute control that filled the room before he spoke a word. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. His gaze passed over her with the same casual assessment he'd give a piece of furniture, acknowledged, categorized, dismissed. Mr. Moretti, Richard Maxwell stood, extending his hand. Thank you for making time. This is Zara Williams, our lead attorney on the merger. Ms. Williams. Dante's handshake was firm, professional, and utterly impersonal. He took his seat, his attention already shifting to Vincent, who began distributing folders. And just like that, Zara became invisible. For the next 2 hours, she spoke perhaps 6 times. Each time, Dante's responses were directed to Richard or the other Maxwell executives, as though her words had traveled through her and originated from the men in the room. It was a dance she knew well, the casual erasure, the subtle redirects, the way her expertise became ambient noise. The liability clause in Section 14 needs revision, Zara said, her voice steady as she slid her annotated copy across the table. Dante glanced at it for 3 seconds. Richard, your team comfortable with that assessment? Richard, to his credit, didn't take the bait. Ms. Williams is the expert. If she says it needs revision, it does. Something flickered across Dante's face, surprise, perhaps, or annoyance at the correction. But he nodded, made a note, and moved on. When the meeting ended, Zara gathered her materials with practiced efficiency. She heard Dante talking to Richard near the door, their voices low but audible. Competent, Dante said. It should have been a compliment. Somehow, it felt like the bare minimum acknowledgement of her existence. Zara left the building and didn't look back. She had 3 weeks until the charity gala, 3 weeks until she'd see Dante Moretti again in a completely different context. 3 weeks until everything changed. The Maxwell Corporation annual charity gala was Chicago's social event of the season, a glittering affair held at the historic Drake Hotel, where old money and new power collided in a carefully choreographed display of wealth masquerading as philanthropy. Zara almost didn't go. She'd RSVP'd months ago, before the Moretti merger consumed her life, before she'd sat in that conference room and felt herself vanish in real time. The temptation to send her regrets was strong. But Zara Williams didn't hide. She'd learned that lesson early from her grandmother, who'd marched through segregated streets with her head high and her dignity intact. Baby girl, her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, you don't shrink yourself for anyone's comfort. You walk in every room like you own it, because your ancestors paid for that right with blood and tears. So Zara stood in her apartment, the red dress hanging before her like a dare. It was stunning, a deep crimson silk that draped like liquid fire, with a neckline that honored her collarbones and a silhouette that celebrated every curve she'd spent too many years being told to hide in professional spaces. The back dipped low, elegant and daring, and when she moved, the fabric caught the light like captured flame. She'd bought it in a moment of defiance, a small rebellion against the neutral tones and modest cuts that had become her uniform. Tonight, she would wear it. Not for Dante Moretti, not for any man's attention, but for herself, a reclamation of the beauty she'd been taught to minimize. Zara slipped into the dress, her reflection transforming before her eyes. She kept her hair natural, her curls framing her face in a soft halo that refused to conform to Eurocentric standards. Her makeup was minimal but striking, a bold lip, highlighting her deep brown skin that seemed to glow against the red silk. She looked powerful. She looked free. The Drake Hotel's ballroom was a symphony of champagne and string quartets, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across Chicago's elite. Zara entered alone, her chin high, her stride confident, completely unaware of the ripple her presence created. Conversations paused. Heads turned. A woman in red commanded attention, but Zara in red demanded reverence. Across the ballroom, Dante Moretti stood with a circle of business associates, a tumbler of scotch in his hand, his expression one of practiced boredom. These events were obligations, networking opportunities wrapped in charitable pretense. He'd arrived with Isabella Romano, a stunning Italian socialite whose family moved in the same circles as his, appropriate, expected, safe. "Dante, you listening?" Vincent's voice pulled him back. "Yeah, the shipment clears Thursday," the words died in his throat. She moved through the crowd like a force of nature, the red dress aflame that drew every eye in the room. It took Dante 3 full seconds to recognize her, Zara Williams, the attorney from the Maxwell merger, completely transformed from the forgettable woman in the gray suit. Except she wasn't transformed. This was who she'd been all along, he realized with a jolt that felt like a punch to his sternum. He'd simply failed to see her. The dress clung to curves he hadn't noticed, moved with a grace he'd overlooked. But it was more than the dress, it was the way she held herself, the quiet confidence radiating from her like heat, the way her natural hair framed her face, the richness of her skin against the crimson silk. She was breathtaking. And that realization terrified him. "Dio mio," Marco breathed beside him. "Who is that?" Dante couldn't answer. His mouth had gone dry, his carefully constructed world tilting on its axis. Somewhere in the back of his mind, his own words echoed mockingly, "Black women aren't my type." What a fool he'd been. Zara accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter, laughing at something Richard Maxwell said, completely unaware, or perhaps simply unbothered, by the attention she commanded. She wasn't performing. She was simply existing, unapologetically, in her own skin. Dante watched her across the room, and for the first time in his carefully controlled life, he felt something crack in his chest, the first fissure in the walls he'd built from prejudice and pride. "You gonna stop staring and actually introduce yourself?" Vincent's voice held amusement. "Or should I remind you what you said about?" "Don't," Dante cut him off, his voice rough. But Vincent's point landed. Dante had said those words, believed them with such certainty. And now, watching Zara Williams command a room full of Chicago's elite with nothing but her presence, he felt the full weight of his own ignorance. Isabella touched his arm, saying something about the auction, but Dante barely heard her. His attention was anchored across the room, to a woman in red who had just shattered every assumption he'd ever made. If you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, or if you've ever made assumptions about someone before really seeing them, this story is for you. Comment below and share your experience. Your story matters, and someone reading this needs to hear it. Don't scroll past without connecting with this community. The evening progressed like a slow-motion collision. Dante tried to focus on the conversations around him, on Isabella's small talk, on the business deals being negotiated between auction items. But his attention kept drifting across the room, tracking red silk and natural curls like a compass finding north. He noticed things he'd missed in the conference room. The way Zara listened, truly listened, when people spoke, her head tilting slightly, her focus absolute. The way her laugh was genuine, not the practiced titter of women trying to seem less intelligent than they were. The way she navigated the room with the confidence of someone who knew her worth and refused to apologize for it. "You should go talk to her," Vincent said quietly, appearing at Dante's elbow with the uncanny timing of a man who'd known him for 20 years. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Boss, you've been staring at her for 40 minutes. Either talk to her or stop torturing yourself." Dante's jaw clenched. "She's Maxwell's attorney. It's business." "That's not a business look." Vincent's expression turned serious. "But if you're gonna do this, you better be sure. Because a woman like that? She doesn't play games, and she doesn't settle for half measures. You approach her, you better be ready to confront some things about yourself." Dante didn't answer, but Vincent's words burrowed deep. What was he ready to confront? The comfortable prejudices he'd inherited like furniture from his father's house. The easy assumptions that let him move through the world without examining his own limitations. Across the room, Zara excused herself from her conversation and moved toward the terrace, stepping through French doors into the cool October night. Dante found himself moving before his mind caught up, leaving Isabella mid-sentence, Vincent's knowing look burning into his back. The terrace overlooked Michigan Avenue, the city lights competing with the stars overhead. Zara stood at the railing, her champagne glass balanced in elegant fingers, her profile ethereal in the moonlight. Ms. Williams. She turned, and Dante saw surprise flicker across her features before her professional mask slid into place. Mr. Moretti. Enjoying the gala? It's tolerable. He moved to the railing, maintaining a respectful distance. These events all blur together after a while. Must be exhausting, all this required socializing with Chicago's elite. Her tone was polite, but he detected something beneath it, a challenge, perhaps, or simple disinterest. You don't enjoy them either. I didn't say that. Zara took a sip of champagne. I just think it's interesting how we dress up charity as entertainment. Write a check, drink expensive wine, congratulate ourselves for caring. Dante studied her profile, the strong line of her jaw, the way the city lights reflected in her eyes. You prefer what? Direct action? Getting our hands dirty? I prefer authenticity. She turned to face him fully, and the directness of her gaze nearly made him step back. But I suppose in our worlds, authenticity is a luxury we can't afford. Our worlds? You know what I mean, Mr. Moretti. You have your world, she gestured toward the ballroom, toward Isabella visible through the glass, with its rules and expectations and careful boundaries. And I have mine, where I'm excellent enough to be indispensable but different enough to remain fundamentally separate. The observation cut deeper than she could know. Dante felt heat creep up his neck. That's quite an assumption. Is it? Zara's smile was sad, knowing. I sat in a conference room with you for 2 hours, Mr. Moretti. You looked at me exactly 3 times. Every question I asked, you answered to Richard Maxwell. Every recommendation I made, you verified with the men in the room. So no, it's not an assumption. It's an observation. Dante felt like he'd been slapped, the truth of her words leaving him defenseless. He wanted to deny it, to explain it away, but she was absolutely right. He had done exactly that, and the shame of it tasted like ash. He started, then stopped. What could he say? Sorry I didn't see you. Sorry my prejudices were so ingrained I didn't recognize brilliance standing right in front of me. Don't. Zara held up a hand. I'm not looking for an apology. I'm 34 years old, Mr. Moretti. I've been invisible to men like you my entire career. I've made peace with it. Men like me, Dante repeated, the phrase hitting like an accusation. Men who've decided what they want before they've bothered to look at what's actually in front of them. She set her champagne glass on the railing, the gesture final. I should get back inside. Wait. The word escaped before he could stop it. Zara paused, one eyebrow raised in polite inquiry, and Dante felt the full weight of this moment, the choice between comfortable certainty and terrifying honesty. You're right, he said, the words coming rough and unpracticed. About the conference room. About me not seeing you. You're right, and he swallowed hard. I'm sorry. That's inadequate, but it's true. Zara studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Why now, Mr. Moretti? Why apologize now, on a terrace, when I'm wearing a dress that makes me impossible to ignore? Why not in the conference room, when it mattered? The question was a knife, precise and devastating. Because you're beautiful, his mind supplied. Because that dress made me look twice. And the honesty of that answer, the shallowness of it, made him sick. I don't have a good answer, he admitted. Nothing that doesn't make me sound like exactly the kind of man you just described. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise, maybe, at his honesty. At least you're self-aware. Zara, her name felt intimate on his tongue, and he saw her register the familiarity, saw the slight widening of her eyes. I made a mistake. Multiple mistakes. And I'd like the chance to correct them. Why? The question was simple, direct, demanding truth. Because you're brilliant, Dante thought. Because you're confident and challenging and you don't need my validation, which makes me want to earn it. Because that dress is destroying me, but so is the way you listen and think and refuse to make yourself smaller. Because you're making me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Because I'd like to know you, he said finally. The real you, not the version I invented in my head based on nothing but my own limitations. Zara was quiet for so long that Dante thought she might simply walk away. Then, slowly, she smiled, a real smile, small and tentative and devastating. That's the first honest thing you've said to me, Mr. Moretti. Dante, he corrected. Please. Dante. She tested his name, and he felt it in his chest. I'm not interested in being your exception. I'm not prejudiced, trophy. Your walk on the wild side. That's not. Let me finish. Steel entered her voice. If you want to know me, it has to be real. Not because I wore a red dress, not because I challenged you, but because you're actually willing to confront why you didn't see me before. Because you're willing to examine your own biases, your assumptions, the comfortable prejudices you've been carrying around like inheritance. Dante felt the weight of her words, the gauntlet she'd thrown down. This wasn't going to be easy. This wasn't going to fit into the neat boxes of his life. And God help him, he wanted it anyway. I understand, he said. Do you? Zara moved closer, and he caught her scent, something warm and spicy, sophisticated. Because I've spent my entire life being not enough and too much simultaneously. Not enough to be seen, too much to be comfortable. I won't shrink myself for you, Dante. Not for anyone. I'm not asking you to. His voice was rough with an emotion he didn't dare name. I'm asking for a chance to see you. Really see you. Without the barriers I built from ignorance. The moment stretched between them, taut with possibility and danger. Behind them, music drifted from the ballroom, and Dante was acutely aware of Isabella inside, of his world watching, of the life he'd built on certainties that were crumbling beneath his feet. One chance, Zara said finally. Coffee. Neutral ground. A conversation where you actually listen instead of performing. Tomorrow, Dante said immediately. Name the place. The Morrison Hotel. 10 a.m. Don't be late, and Dante. She met his eyes directly. Come ready to be honest. About everything. She walked past him, the red dress whispering against her skin, leaving him alone on the terrace with his racing heart and the ruins of his assumptions. Inside, Isabella waited. His life waited, the comfortable, predictable life he built on inherited prejudices and unchallenged beliefs. But tomorrow, at 10 a.m., Zara Williams would be waiting too. And Dante knew, with terrifying certainty, which choice he was going to make. The Morrison Hotel's cafe was neutral ground, upscale enough to feel safe, public enough to discourage drama. Zara arrived at 9:55, ordering a black coffee and claiming a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. Dante walked in at exactly 10 o'clock, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous than his tailored suits ever had. This was Dante Moretti without armor, and Zara felt her carefully constructed defenses waver. Thank you for coming, he said, sitting across from her. I almost didn't. Honesty seemed to be their currency now. I spent half the night talking myself out of this. What changed your mind? Zara considered lying, offering some professional deflection. But she'd challenged him to honesty, she owed him the same. Curiosity, she admitted. And maybe, hope. That you actually meant what you said last night. Dante ordered an espresso, then turned his full attention to her, really looking at her, the way he should have from the beginning. I need to tell you something. A few weeks ago, before the Maxwell merger meeting, one of my men asked if. He stopped, his jaw working. He asked if you were my type. Zara's expression didn't change, but Dante saw her brace for impact. I said, black women aren't my type. The words tasted like poison now, but he forced them out. I said it casually, like it was just a preference. Like reducing an entire group of women to a checkbox on my list was somehow acceptable. The silence that followed was crushing. Zara's face showed nothing, years of professional training hiding whatever she felt. But her hands, wrapped around her coffee cup, tightened slightly. Why are you telling me this? Her voice was carefully neutral. Because you deserve to know what you'd be getting involved with. Not some reformed man who's magically seen the light. A man who's spent 38 years absorbing prejudice like it was oxygen, who's never questioned it because it was comfortable. Because it protected me from having to examine my own limitations. And now? Zara asked quietly. Now I'm sitting across from the most brilliant, beautiful, challenging woman I've ever met, and all I can think about is how close I came to never knowing you existed. How many other people I've dismissed, how much richness I've excluded from my life because of inherited biases I never bothered to question. Dante leaned forward, his voice intense. I can't promise I won't mess this up. My world, my family, my business, it's built on traditions that include some ugly assumptions. But I'm here, Zara, choosing you over those assumptions. Choosing to confront everything I've been taught because the alternative is walking away from you, and I can't do that. Zara was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face. You know what the hardest part is? I believe you. I believe you're being honest about your prejudices, about your journey. But Dante, I can't be your education. I can't be the black woman who teaches you how to not be racist. That's exhausting, and it's not my job. I'm not asking you to be, Dante said quickly. I'm asking for a chance to prove that I can do the work myself. That I can confront my family's expectations, my own internalized biases, without putting that burden on you. Your family, Zara repeated. The Moretti family, with all their traditions and expectations. You think they're going to accept this? Accept me? Dante's silence was answer enough. Exactly. Zara's smile was sad. So what are we doing here, Dante? Playing pretend? Having a secret affair until reality crashes in? No. The word came out fierce. I'm choosing you, Zara. Openly. Publicly. Whatever consequences come. You don't know what you're saying. Your world. My world has kept me small, Dante interrupted. Safe and small and surrounded by people who never challenge me, never push me to be better. You scare the hell out of me, Zara Williams. Not because of your skin color, but because you make me want to be a man worthy of you, and I'm not sure I know how to do that yet. Zara felt tears prick her eyes, the honesty of his words cracking through her defenses. I'm scared too, she whispered. I've spent so long protecting myself, building walls so high that nothing can hurt me. And then you show up, this complicated, infuriating man with his inherited prejudices and his honest eyes, and I want to believe this could work. It can work, Dante said, reaching across the table to take her hand. If we're both willing to be uncomfortable. If I'm willing to confront my family, my world, my own assumptions. If you're willing to trust that I'll do the work, that I won't make you carry the burden of my education. Zara looked down at their joined hands, his pale against her deep brown, a visual representation of everything that made this complicated. My grandmother marched with Dr. King, she said quietly. She was spit on, arrested, beaten by police for demanding to be seen as human. And she told me, baby girl, don't ever let anyone make you small. Don't ever settle for someone who can't see your full glory. She looked up, meeting Dante's eyes directly. You didn't see my glory, Dante. Not at first. You saw a convenient category, a preference to exclude. And while I believe you're trying to change, I need to know, if I hadn't worn that red dress, would we be here? Or would you have gone on thinking black women just weren't your type? The question hung between them, brutal in its honesty. Dante felt the weight of it, the truth she was demanding. I don't know, he admitted, the words like shattered glass. And that terrifies me. Because it means I was so lost in my own prejudice that I needed a wake-up call to see what was right in front of me. But Zara, he tightened his grip on her hand. I'm awake now. I'm seeing you now. And I'm choosing, every day, to keep seeing you, to keep questioning myself, to keep doing the work. Zara felt something break open in her chest, not walls crumbling, but a door unlocking. She'd spent so long being strong, being invulnerable, protecting herself from exactly this kind of vulnerability. But maybe, just maybe, this man sitting across from her was worth the risk. One condition, she said softly. We do this right. No hiding. No being your secret while you figure out how to tell your family. If you want me, Dante Moretti, you get all of me, my brilliance, my strength, my blackness, my refusal to shrink. And you stand beside me, publicly, when the world has opinions. Deal, Dante said without hesitation. And one condition of my own, you call me on my blind spots. When I mess up, because I will, you don't let it slide. You push me to be better. I can do that, Zara smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. I'm actually quite good at it. Dante laughed, a sound of pure relief and joy. I don't doubt it. They sat there, hands joined, the future uncertain but suddenly, impossibly, full of potential. 3 months later, the Moretti family Christmas dinner was held at the ancestral estate in Lake Forest, a sprawling mansion that had seen generations of carefully curated gatherings. Dante's father, Salvatore, presided at the head of the table, his mother, Lucia, managing the staff with practiced efficiency. And beside Dante, wearing an emerald green dress that made her look like royalty, sat Zara Williams. The reaction had been predictable. Salvatore's barely concealed displeasure. Lucia's cold politeness. The whispers from aunts and uncles, the sideways glances from cousins. But Dante's hand never left the small of Zara's back, his message clear, she was here to stay. So, Ms. Williams, Salvatore said, his accent thick with old-world authority. Dante tells us you're an attorney. I am. Zara's voice was calm, composed. I made partner at Sterling and Associates last year, specializing in corporate mergers. Impressive. Salvatore's tone suggested it was anything but. And your family? What do they do? Here it was, the subtle investigation into her pedigree, her worthiness to enter their world. My father is a retired postal worker, Zara said clearly. My mother was a nurse. Both are from Alabama, where my grandparents were sharecroppers before the civil rights movement opened new opportunities. The table fell silent. Dante felt Zara's spine straighten slightly, preparing for judgment. That's quite a legacy, Dante said into the silence, his voice strong. Zara's grandmother marched in Selma, was arrested in Birmingham, fought for the rights that our generation takes for granted. Her family built something from nothing, overcame barriers we can't imagine, created opportunities through pure determination and brilliance. He turned to his father, meeting his eyes directly. You taught me that family legacy matters, Papa. That what our ancestors fought for, sacrificed for, defines us. Zara's ancestors fought for dignity, for equality, for the right to be seen as human. If you can't respect that legacy, then you don't understand what legacy really means. Salvatore's expression was unreadable. Lucia dabbed her mouth with a napkin, her movements precise and revealing nothing. Then, unexpectedly, Dante's grandmother, Nana Rosa, 93 and sharp as ever, spoke from the end of the table. You remind me of myself, she said to Zara in heavily accented English. When I come to America from Sicily, people look at me like I am dirt. Like I am not good enough for their clean American streets. My Giovanni, she pointed at a photo on the wall, Dante's late grandfather, he see me. Not what people say I am. What I really am. She reached across the table, her aged hand covering Zara's. Love that sees you true, that is rare thing. You hold on to that. Zara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you, Nana. The evening thawed slowly after that. Not everyone warmed to Zara, some relatives remained distant, others made comments that revealed their own prejudices. But Dante stayed beside her through it all, his presence a constant reminder that she belonged, that she was chosen. Later, standing on the mansion's terrace overlooking snow-covered grounds, Zara and Dante found a moment alone. That was, Zara started. Awful. Dante supplied. Uncomfortable. Everything I warned you about. Actually, I was going to say, enlightening. Zara leaned against the railing, her breath misting in the cold air. You stood up for me. Publicly. To your father. I told you I would. Dante wrapped his coat around her shoulders, pulling her close. No hiding, remember. You get all of me, standing beside all of you. Zara tilted her face up to his. I never thanked you. For what? For being willing to change. For doing the work. For loving me enough to confront your own prejudices. She touched his face gently. I know it's not easy, challenging everything you were taught. But you do it anyway. You're worth it, Dante said simply. Every difficult conversation, every family confrontation, every moment of examining my own blind spots, you're worth all of it. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Zara's breath caught. I know it's fast, Dante said, opening the box to reveal a stunning ring, a deep red ruby surrounded by diamonds, the color of the dress that changed everything. But I've wasted enough time on assumptions and prejudices and comfortable ignorance. I want to spend the rest of my life seeing you, choosing you, loving you. Zara Williams, will you marry me? Zara looked at the ring, at this complicated man who'd challenged himself to be better, who'd chosen growth over comfort, who'd stood beside her even when it cost him. Yes, she whispered, then stronger, yes. Dante slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her, a kiss that tasted like hope and promise and futures they'd build together. Inside, through the mansion windows, they could see the Moretti family. Some would accept this, others wouldn't. The road ahead would have challenges, moments where Dante's growth faltered, times when Zara's patience wore thin. But they'd face it together, a brilliant attorney who refused to shrink and a reformed man learning to see beyond his inherited limitations. Black women aren't my type, Dante had said once, certain in his prejudice. Now, holding Zara Williams close, that red dress memory burned into his heart, Dante knew the truth, she wasn't a type. She was the woman who'd shattered his certainties, challenged his assumptions, and taught him that real love demands we become better than we were. She was simply, completely, the love of his life. 2 years later, at the annual Maxwell Corporation Gala, Dante and Zara Moretti stood together in the same ballroom where everything changed. Zara wore red again, a different dress, but the color that had become their private symbol. Remember when you couldn't see me? Zara teased, her hand resting on the small swell of her pregnancy. I was blind, Dante admitted, placing his hand over hers. And you gave me sight. Across the room, younger associates watched them, the power couple who defied expectations, the brilliant attorney and the reformed businessman who'd chosen love over prejudice. And somewhere, Zara's grandmother smiled, knowing her baby girl had never made herself small, had found a man willing to grow tall enough to stand beside her. The red dress hung in their closet at home, a reminder that sometimes, it takes one moment of reclamation, one act of unapologetic self-love, to change everything. Not because the dress made Dante see her. But because Zara, wearing it, refused to be invisible anymore. If this story touched your heart, I need you to do something right now, don't just scroll past. Comment below with one word describing what you felt. Just one word. Because if 10,000 people watch this and only 50 comment, that tells me these stories don't matter. That story's about challenging prejudice, about choosing growth over comfort, about black women being celebrated for their full glory, that these stories aren't worth your 3 seconds to type a word. Prove me wrong. Show me this community cares. Comment now. Your engagement determines if I continue telling stories that challenge us to be better.